Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. We're the token American family.
Is that the DeBerry family?
That's us. That's us. Hey, Dean.
So great to see you guys. Welcome.
How are
Thanks,
you?
thank
you
you.
for having us.
You're very welcome. We're glad to
An
have you.
honor.
Grateful for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks.
We get started shortly here.
Are we waiting on the clerk?
Yeah, just having a quick technical difficulty. Give me 1 sec.
No, Nick, get it fixed.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started, so. Good evening, everyone. Please join us as we salute the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this is the state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2021 to the news record and Star Ledger in December 2020, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Adams?
Here.
Mr. Dacus?
Present.
Luca?
Here.
Lambert?
Here.
Reedy?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231 Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies to be open to the public. And whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting. And whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provisions at the same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Adams?
Yes.
Dacus?
Yes.
Luca?
Yes.
Lambert?
Yes.
Mayor Reedy?
Yes, and thank you, Ms. Fritzen. And good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Thursday, September 9th Township Committee meeting. Before we get started, I would like for everyone to join us in a moment of silence as we recognize the passing of Patrick Jeffrey. We recognize the passing of Ken and Fran Bailey. We recognize the passing of two of our residents due to COVID-19. And we also recognize the passing of fellow Haitian and Haitian Americans in the Haitian earthquake that occurred in August. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Good evening again. And what I'd like to do now is quickly run through our agenda before we get started. Tonight, we'll be doing a handful of employee spotlights, really as a result of the tropical storm Ida, which occurred last week. We'll be recognizing our first responders, our police department, our fire department, and our public works. We'll also be recognizing residents who also stepped up during Tropical Storm Ida as well. From there, we'll move into our first public comment, which is on agenda items only, and a limit to 3 minutes. From there, we'll have our monthly Board of Health meeting, which will be led by Ms. Davenport. And then we will discuss reports from our departments. We have a memo from our CFO, Mr. Kaloje, so we'll discuss that. From there, we'll move into our administrative reports. We'll hear from Mr. Johns, our Township Administrator. We'll hear from Mr. Desiderio, our Township Attorney, and from Ms. Fritzen, our Township Clerk. After that, we'll have reports from elected officials. We'll hear from Mr. Limbrick, Ms. Adams, Mr. DeLuca, and then Mr. Dacus. Tonight, we have 6 discussion items. The first is the petition receipt in regards to the referendum. The second is regarding Gleason cleaners and a potential need for rehabilitation. The third is a community board of police ordinance revision. The fourth is our parklets for outdoor dining and what that will look like in the future. Our fifth discussion item is about cannabis. And our sixth and final discussion item is regarding Oregon Street between Springfield and Laurel Avenue, and a list of streets with no parking within 5 feet of the driveway. From there, we'll move on to our consent agenda, which has 21 items. They include authorizations regarding our affordability assistance grant, appointments, such as John Massey to our utility foreman for Public Works, and Robert to the utility leadman, Department of Public Works. We have hiring as well, we'll discuss. The hiring of John Hill as a full-time environmental health specialist in our health department. We'll discuss contracts, the awarding contracts for phase services for the fiscal year for capital roadway improvements, as well as a professional engineering contract for land and development services for our Maplewood Village parking lot. We'll have a handful of resolutions, including the affordable home and affordable housing, which we are selling in Maplewood. Then we'll have authorization of tax overpayments, authorization of payment to staff members who have left our township. And then we'll go on to bills and claims. And then from there, we'll also look at the approval of our regular session minutes and also closed session minutes. Our 13th agenda item is on public comment on any subject matter, also limited to 3 minutes, and then we will adjourn. So that is our agenda for this evening. Thank you again for joining us. We will now start with our employee spotlights, and I yield the floor to Mr. DeLuca. Mr. DeLuca, you have the floor.
Sorry. I'm happy to read a proclamation for the Maplewood Police Department regarding the Tropical Storm Ida. Whereas on Wednesday evening, September 1st, our community experienced the power of Tropical Storm Ida. And whereas the amount of rainfall that occurred in a short period of time impacted every home in our community, and during that time, people's lives were at risk. And whereas without the valor and heroism of our first responders, police, DPW, and fire, more lives would have been lost. And whereas the Township Committee is eternally grateful to the efforts of our police department, and whereas the Township Committee recognizes that these brave men and women went above and beyond to ensure the safety of our community and stepped into harm's way at the risk of their own lives. And whereas their acts of bravery are recognized and appreciated by every single member of this community, now therefore be it resolved, the Mayor and Township Committee of the Township of Maplewood express our gratitude and appreciation to the Maplewood Police Department. I see we have Chief Duvall here. Thank you, Chief. And to Officers Justin Moen and Giovanni Cruz, who rescued a resident who was trapped by the floodwaters. Congratulations to the police department.
Thanks, Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. We'll now hear from Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank you. I see that Chief Ariema is joining us. This is a proclamation honoring the Maplewood Fire Department for their service during Hurricane Ida, which went above and beyond. Whereas on September 1st, our community experienced Tropical Storm Ida, and whereas the amount of rainfall that occurred in a short period of time impacted every home in our community, and during that time, people's lives were at risk. And whereas without the valor and heroism of our first responders, including the Maplewood Fire Department, more lives would have been lost. And whereas the Township Committee is eternally grateful for the efforts of our firefighters, and whereas the Township Committee recognizes that these brave men went above and beyond to ensure the safety of our community and stepped into harm's way at the risk of their own lives, and whereas their act of bravery are recognized and appreciated by every single member of this community, now therefore be it resolved by Frank McGehee, Mayor, and the Maplewood Township Committee, we express our gratitude and appreciation to the entire Maplewood Fire Department, and particularly to Deputy Chief Kozak, Captain Hannigan, Captain Whitting, Captain Colatriglio, Captain Fortunato, Firefighter Aliano, Firefighter Ricardella, Firefighter Thomas, Firefighter Wolf, and Firefighter Sanchez, who handled 225 calls, including addressing an infant not breathing, performed approximately 40 water rescues, including hours climbing into manholes in the darkness during dangerous water surges, trying to recover a missing resident. So it's our honor tonight to recognize the work and the bravery of the Maplewood Fire Department. And Chief Ariema, to you and to your entire department, we thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lumberg.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mr. Lembrick and Mr. DeLuca. I will now read some of the proclamation which we have here now for our Department of Public Works. And what I want to do is not to be too redundant, but just want to highlight the key points. And that is based on the power of Tropical Ida, and also based on the rainfall that occurred in that short period of time. We are, as a township, internally grateful to the efforts of our public works. Their acts of bravery were unprecedented. And really, the Department of Public Works worked and continue to work tirelessly to remove downed trees, road debris, secure down power lines, assist residents with basement flooding, securing our public parks, manholes, and public facilities, and currently are executing a mass bulk pickup. So thank you to Cesar Riccardi and all of our Department of Public Works. I'll now yield the floor to Ms. Adams.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to be recognizing the assistance given to our rescue teams that were just highlighted by our resident Edward Mead during Hurricane or Tropical Storm, just Nightmare Ida. Whereas on Wednesday evening, September 1st, our community experienced the power of this tropical storm. And whereas the amount of rainfall that occurred in that short period that we've referenced the last 3 proclamations impacted every home in our community. And during that time, people's lives were at risk. And whereas without the heroism of not only the first responders, but the quick thinking and selfless residents move the lives that have been lost. And whereas the Township Committee is eternally grateful for the efforts of those residents. And whereas the Township Committee recognizes that one brave resident went above and beyond to rescue a police officer and resident who were both trapped by the floodwaters at the risk of his own life. And whereas on behalf of his bravery and recognized with great appreciation, now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and Township Committee of Maplewood express our deep gratitude and appreciation to Edward Mead, who assisted Maplewood Police by providing safety equipment, which was used in the rescue of a Maplewood police officer.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. I will now yield the floor to Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. I have the honor of honoring other residents who became first responders last Wednesday night during dangerous tropical storm Ida. The definition of valor is exceptional acts of courage. And this family, along with our other first responders that we're recognizing tonight, really epitomizes that. And Mayor, with your consent, I would like to have the DeBarry family, which is with us tonight, I'd like to have them speak and briefly recount what they did to help save an officer and a young woman, one of our residents, on Wednesday night before I read the proclamation in their honor.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, Jason, are you still with us?
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Jason, welcome to your beautiful family and to you. And so tell us what happened last Wednesday night and how you came to the rescue.
So at the bottom of August, my son and I were out in the storm because trying to take care of some things. And we saw the car at the bottom of the street and went to go look. The river, the Raritan, was raging like the Colorado, and just as we got there, an officer got there and tried to go into rescue the girl and her father. And, he was overcome by the water very quickly. And so we ran up to the house. We had life jackets in the shed and rope and flashlights. So we ran up and got that stuff and went down to the golf course, and just, an officer was there, and then fire and rescue were there, and they were, we love them all. And we just tried to provide support. The officer was out on a hill that was now an island. And the girl was out on the bridge that goes over the golf course, really terrified and screaming. It was really terrifying, and it was really life or death. And we just all lent a hand.
Yeah.
And
we just really wanted to be involved and be supportive for her. We were talking with Ed Mead, who was there, and he suggested, I have a longboard, and I was like, totally, let's do it. Should we get the longboard? I just remember being very active and kind of like screaming to the girl, like, we're going to save you. Don't worry,
we were
don't
trying
worry.
to communicate with the girl because she kept screaming that she was afraid she was going to faint. And she told me that she was up on the bridge, which was high up over the river. It was up to her knees by the time the officer got to her. So, and she had been out there, she said, for quite a while. So when she came in, she was really upset and freezing, and so
alone, and she was shaking so much, and it was like a lot of very strong, heroic men around, but I just felt this kind of maternal need to, I think what any mother would probably do, like, I just wanted to hug her and be like, are you okay? I'm here for you. And the firemen, said, can you take her home? And I was like, of course. And we like happily brought her back to the house and warmed her and like gave her, whatever she needed, and like made her feel comfortable. And she stayed with us for like an hour and just chilled out on the couch with the kids, who were also super supportive. And I think it was quite exciting for them. Yeah, it was just,
we're all out there. And then I went, an officer asked me to go and survey the rest of along the golf course to see if anyone else needed help. And by the time I got back, everybody was gone. And it just struck me at how, in the time it took me to go and look, and thank God no one was there, when I came back, fire, police were all off to the next emergency. And it just, struck us all as just, thank God for them. I mean, they just, from one thing to the next, just helping.
Yeah.
So we're grateful.
We were happy to help with the life jackets, and they were out in the water. The cops were just super active with like going out in the water with the life vests, and just, it felt really good.
And we just tried to keep lights on their reflectors, but when the officer went to get the girl, he was so far out that the flashlight couldn't cut, the rain was in sheets also, but we lost track of him out on the water. So finally we just saw them as they came out of the darkness, as they were pulling her in on a rope. And, they rescued the officer first, and because he was closer. And so we just tried to do what we could.
Well, you did more than what you could. You were exceptionally brave. You risked your own lives to save other lives. And we're incredibly grateful to you. Really, we are. Hey, August, what did you do that night? How did you help here?
When we were down there, I yelled to the girl that her father was in the water. He fell in, and then Dad sent me back up to the house, and I yelled to Mom to that a man fell in the river, and then they all
To get him
He was like Paul
blankets and
Revere.
towers.
He was Paul
towels.
Revere. He went to go and rally
Yeah.
the troops.
Yeah,
Paul Revere, that's excellent. That's an excellent analogy.
yeah.
Well, congratulations, you all. We are exceptionally grateful for your valor.
Thank you.
Maybe we can get
We're
you on
honored.
a Today Show. How about that? You and Mr. Mead and some of our other first responders. So with
And
that,
our neighbor, if I may, our neighbor Todd Illingworth was there with us as well.
Yeah.
And he's not here tonight, but he was a big help as well. The neighborhood all.
There was a
pitched
lot
in.
of running going on.
lot
Todd
of-
was running. Todd Illingsworth, he's like a really very present in the community. He was running and calling and shouting. You know, there was a lot of activity. And I also just wanted to point out, just in the aftermath of Ida, just seeing, you know, how the spirit of our community coming together to help out. I mean, I feel like what we did was, you know, in the moment, but like just all the work that everybody's done to help out, just to give their time to volunteer to our community businesses and, you know, to all the people who suffered in this. I just really,
yes,
like
we have come together in
Yeah.
times of tragedy, and that's who we are in this community. And you're a great example of that. So I'd love to honored to present you with your proclamation, honoring you for your heroism that evening. The proclamation is similar to the previous one. It says that on Wednesday evening, September 1st, our community experienced a powerful tropical storm Ida. The amount of rainfall that occurred in such a short period of time impacted everyone, every home in the community, putting people's lives at risk. Without the heroism of not only our first responders, but also the quick thinking and selfless residents such as yourselves, the Township Committee is internally grateful for your efforts and recognizes your bravery, going above and beyond to rescue a police officer and resident who were both trapped by the floodwaters, and risk your own lives in doing so. Your acts of bravery are recognized and greatly appreciated. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Frank McGehee, on behalf of all of us on the Maplewood Township Committee, we express our gratitude and appreciation to the DeBarry family, Jason, Catherine, August, and let me not forget your daughter. What's her name?
Layla.
Layla. There you go, Layla. By providing safety equipment, which was used in the rescue of a Maplewood police officer. Congratulations and thank you again.
thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. We're honored. Good job, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Well, we'll now move on in our agenda to agenda item number 6, which is public comment, agenda items only, and limit of 3 minutes. So, Mr. Waltz, I know you're not in the room with us, so I'll yield the floor to you to start the process.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Township Committee. We will now begin the first public comment portion of the meeting on agenda items only. If any meeting attendee would like to address the Township Committee, please use the raise your hand function. We will convert you over to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak. Would anybody like to address the Township Committee? Okay, Mayor, first up, looks like we have Marion Rabb. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Marion Rabb, and I'm a Maplewood resident. Thank you so much for giving me this time to speak today. My heart goes out to all of the victims of Tropical Storm Ida. There are no words to talk about the devastation and the grief and the loss that our community has suffered in the past week. Losing one of our own community members and having another one of our community members who is a dear friend of mine lose her parents in this horrible tropical storm. And so it pains me to have to bring this up after such heart-wrenching testimony, but I must bring up my concerns and very serious considerations about discussion item number 1, which is on the agenda for tonight, which is listed as petition receipt and next steps. I'm assuming that this is referring to the petition that myself and over 24 other local Maplewood volunteers went around for about 2 weeks and collected over 1,000 signatures of Maplewood registered voters to put a referendum question, on the November ballot to ask the public of Maplewood, the Maplewood voters, whether or not we should spend more than $1.7 million, I believe, to put artificial turf on DeHart Park, a public park. I can't tell you how much more concerned I am about putting artificial turf onto Hart Park at this point after Hurricane or Tropical Storm Ida caused such extensive damage and such extensive flooding to our town. And I don't even want to imagine what could have happened to residents who live right next to DeHart Park if that natural grass field had been turned into an artificial plastic grass field. And I'm not a scientist, but I think we can all agree that there could have been some extraordinary, tragic and disastrous repercussions to the residents
30 seconds.
who have their homes immediately adjacent to the park. People, not just in Maplewood, lost their lives in this tropical storm. The earth is not happy. I think we can all agree that science is real and global climate change is real and global warming is real. And we have to do everything we can and go back to the old adage, which I think really applies now when it comes to environmentalism. We must all think globally and act locally.
That is your time.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Ms. Rapp.
Okay, Mayor, next up, I don't have a full name. I just have an F. Meyer. So we will convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak.
Oh, Nick, actually there's somebody, Kristen Haas, who's next in line, who's converted.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I was just putting my video on. I just like to say that it was amazing to hear that story about the rescue. I had goosebumps during it, and it was very heroic, and I'm so proud to live in a town that we do that for each other. So I just want to say that first. It was really amazing to hear that story. I'm just here. I'm Chris Haas. I own the Botanica Boutique, a CBD and cannabis store here in Maplewood. It's only online right now, but I do plan to apply for a delivery license. And I just I'm excited to hear the town's plans during the meeting today. And I just wanted to kind of say hi and, let you guys know that the retail licenses won't be up first for the New Jersey Regulatory Committee, but I hope that sometime the end of the year or the beginning of next year that I will be applying. And I hope and Dean and I have spoke about this, and I hope for town approval and support. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Haas.
Okay, Mayor, now we have F. Meyer. You have 3 minutes. We'll convert you to a panelist.
I think they're on mute still, Nick.
Yeah, you're still on mute.
Sorry, I didn't see that I had the controls. My bad, interface changed. Okay, my name is Fred Meyer. I live at 14 Maple Terrace, and I'd like to commend and thank the first responders who drove the rescue efforts and the tragic death of Pat Jeffrey on September 1st. I was one of Pat's neighbors who spent the night looking for him, and I greatly appreciate the expertise and can-do attitude of those who joined us in the search for Pat. They were able to do things we were not, probing with halyards and bravely searching the storm drain system. We were able to work together to do everything that we could. I would like to see that same attitude brought to bear on fixing the gaping safety issues around the storm drains on our street. I would like to see this harrowing preventable death brought to bear on the seemingly interminable process between residents, the town, and the state to fix this drainage system. We need grates on all entry points into the system immediately. New Jersey DEP must get out of the way and approve full piping and filling of all parts of this drainage system that are still open to the air. We need far greater capacity to handle the water that we know with climate change will continue to come. This system is unsafe for the 10 children and many adults who live around it, and it is wholly inadequate for the amounts of water that flow into it. Piping it will in fact reduce capacity, and dangerous flooding will persist unless other measures are taken to provide proper drainage. When I tell people about Pat's death, I anticipate they will wonder why he was out in the middle of a big storm. But the truth is that at that exact moment, I was talking to a neighbor about whether we should go out to clear debris as well. It's alarmingly commonplace for us. We go out to protect our property from worse flooding. As leaves fall, we must think about clearing streets like ours before storms, not after. I ask all decision makers to ask what media coverage you would want of this. Is it a scandal of preventable death? Is it a town and state taking action to protect its citizens and properly prepare for the climate future? Make this story what you want it to be. And let's never again have a situation like this on our street that requires our first responders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, next up we have a Juliana Archery. Convert you to a panelist and give you 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. As a resident of Maplewood and neighbor of Maple Terrace, words can't express enough gratitude to the police, fire department, and all rescue personnel involved in the tragic events that took place on September 1st. They were brave and compassionate, and we should be proud that such men and women are the ones who keep us safe in times of need. However, the fact that we needed their assistance on that night highlights the fact that we were left to our own devices many years ago regarding the dangerous culvert that caused a tragic accident in which our dear neighbor and friend, Pat Jeffrey, saw the end of his life. I do not wish for his family that his passing becomes a statistic. In America, data and numbers are good at erasing the face and facts of life of people who die each year in senseless incidents. I want everyone present to know that what happened on Maple Terrace robbed a family of a father and a husband. Pat is not a number. The police and firemen did everything they could, but they were summoned here because the town didn't do anything to prevent such tragedy. So the call for action from our law enforcement and firemen is a direct consequence of the town and New Jersey DEP lacks of thereof, easily seen in wordy emails packed with legalese paragraphs that have been going back and forth for months, emails and meetings that haven't solved anything. So let's never forget that what happened could have been prevented years ago with an agreement that an open culvert packed with weeds, trees, bushes, debris, stagnant water, and mosquitoes, and with very much a limited capacity to drain water, has been sitting on our street for years. I invite everyone involved to take definitive action and resolve this once and for all. So I never again in my life have to see a diver going into a manhole in front of my house or a group of firemen poking the culvert looking for a human body. Sorry. Pat shouldn't be a statistic. And the bare minimum you can do for his family is to fix this. When people say, let's not allow a person's death to be in vain, they refer to a resolution regarding what prompted the incident in itself. But I find those words lacking meaning. As Pat's passing was in vain, it was senseless, and is going to scar the residents of this street for life, not to say leave a hole that's impossible to fill in the hearts of his wife, kids, and family. I summon the town to do something with the same force, the same courage and bravery that our police and fire department showed that night. And please prove me wrong, because the only thing I feel right now is a lack of trust in your local governing institutions.
Thank you, Ms. Archery. Message received. Thank you very much for your words.
Okay, Mayor, next up we have Heather Soslovsky. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, everyone. I originally was just going to thank you for re-engaging Lincoln Landscaping at DeHart Park. I know it's been about 6 years since you had a contract with them, and I think the field looks better than it's looked in a really long time. But given everything that's just been said, I mean, I think it's very, very clear that the drainage issues, flooding, and climate change should be our top priority in this town. I think our money should be put into protecting lives as well as property. I would note your DPW. I know you've mentioned a few of the other first responders, but the DPW did a fabulous job, at least down by me. Field Road had a very large tree go down, and they were here the very next morning trying to make our road passable, safe, and let other responders in to bring back the electric. I think Ida really should refocus our town on what's important. I think it's really clear here that we need to put lives first, and that that's where our money should be going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Soslovsky.
I see no one else at this time, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. We'll now move on.
Mr. Mayor, I did have a
agenda
hand
item
just
number 7.
come up. Would you like to allow them to speak?
We're going to move on because I think it's important. We'll now move on to agenda item number 7, which is our Board of Health meeting. I yield the floor to Ms. Daffis. Actually, I yield the floor to Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me, I'm trying to collect myself here after that moving testimony from my neighbors. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of New Jersey, 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2021 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2020, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams?
Here.
Mr. DeLuca?
Here.
Mayor McGee?
Here.
Mr. Daffis?
Here.
I'm also here. I'm hearing, is there, I don't know, hearing a beeping?
Yeah, it's a loud beep. It's a text message sound, not mine, but should be.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I couldn't even hear my name being called because I kept hearing a beeping going off.
If we can, whoever has phones, if you can mute them and put them on vibrate, that'd be great. Thank you for duly noted for whoever's phone that is.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas desire the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provision of this act, same time conduct in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be resolved by the Maplewood Board of Health, Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the Board of Health by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. I move the approval of our BOH minutes from August 3rd. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, thank you again, Ms. Fritzen. Health Officer Davenport, you have the floor for your report.
Thank you very much. I just want to say condolences go out to the Jeffrey family and the community for the suffering that everyone's going through for Tropical Storm Ida. It's really hard. So our hearts go out to you from the health department. I'm going to share our screen here. So bear with me for 1 second, please. Okay. I'll begin with our Board of Health presentation, starting with a COVID nursing update. Our current August trending numbers, unfortunately, our total case number load is 1,717. We've had 79 cases in the month of August. 33 cases are vaccinated breakthrough cases. And unfortunately, we've had 2 deaths in the month of August. So my condolences also go to the families of those 2 who have died and passed due to COVID. To give you a perspective of COVID cases by month, compared to July and August, this is the rate of vaccinated in red and those who are unvaccinated in blue. So what I want to emphasize here is that while we have a wonderful vaccination rate in Maplewood, we still have those who are unvaccinated. And I'd strongly encourage everyone who is unvaccinated to please go get vaccinated. By doing that, you'd be reducing the number of cases that we would have and exposures our community would be exposed to. When we talk about travel, you'll notice on the bottom left, those in July and August, out of 85 cases in July, 25 traveled. And of the 79 cases in August, 16 traveled. Of those in August, 10 of those were vaccinated. So those are breakthrough cases. And unvaccinated were 6 who traveled. So travel is a concern and an issue. So when people travel, please follow the CDC guidance for isolation and quarantine. Here's the age distribution for both the months of July and August, just to give you a late summer overview. As you can see, for ages 0 to 9 and 10 to 19, we have almost a 31%. It's 19% plus 12%. It kind of follows along the lines of those who've gotten vaccinated. The more people and the older ones have gotten more time to be vaccinated, the more people in percentage in that age range have gotten vaccinated, the less cases we have shown to have. So we are all eagerly anticipating the 11 and under vaccination. And for those 12 and up who can still be eligible to get Pfizer vaccine, please continue to do so, especially with the beginning of school year. Just so that you know, this hasn't changed from the September update that was sent out earlier today. So this is from August 28th, but it still stays the same. Essex County is in moderate, which is the yellow part right here. Everything else below us, though, as you can see, is in high. I just wanted to show you the COVID-19 variant surveillance specimens by week. Again, I just want to emphasize this latest bar here, which shows that Delta variant is the highest and most prevalent variant strain at this time. These are the case stats for Maplewood vaccination. Again, we have a robust vaccination rate for all of our age groups, 12 and up, 18 and up, 65 and over, and 80%. They are steadily increasing from month to month. So thank you to all those who are getting vaccinated. The numbers show that. In Essex County, the numbers of fully vaccinated have also increased. Let me just move the screen here. Approximately 68% of Essex County is now vaccinated. The rate of transmission in New Jersey is now 1.04, excuse me. Part of our efforts in getting people vaccinated and tested have become much more hyper-localized. We had an August 17th COVID vaccination clinic with Essex County in partnership with them. So thank you to them at Columbia High School. So thank you to our school district for allowing us to do it in their parking lot. At that time, 55% were vaccinated and 27 were tested. The school district is now doing testing every Saturday up for September and October at Columbia High School. So on August 30th, they reported that 250 people were tested at their testing site. And on September 4th, just to give you an update, 152 people were tested at that site as well. So continue to attend the Saturday Columbia High School mobile clinic mobile testing sites at Columbia High School's parking lot. We had 2 homebound vaccinations completed for the month of August as well. Just to give you an update on EssexCovid.org, they do have the information for the free vaccination and testing locations, both at Essex County College, Kmart, as well as the Sears Livingston Mall site is now reopened for vaccination as well as testing. So just wanted to put that out there, that EssexCovid.org, you can sign up for both testing and vaccinations, and these are free. There is a lot of talk about the what is the difference between a 3rd dose and a booster dose. I just want to make that clarification that the 3rd dose is now being offered for those who are immunocompromised. And I've put in the eligibility criteria on this slide here so that you can see when they talk about immunocompromised, these are the cases and eligibility criteria that they're looking for. Those who are severely or moderately immunocompromised are eligible for a 3rd dose. And for those who are immunocompromised, they're looking at a 3-dose series. That's why it's called the 3rd dose, because for immunocompromised, they should have 3 doses. For the general public, they're looking at the booster dose. And right now we're looking at hopefully Pfizer to be approved as a booster dose for the general public by September 20th, hopefully. And then they're looking to make a booster dose available for Moderna and J&J, but that's still under FDA approval. They're still running tests on that. So just wanted to give you that update. And again, a clarification for the immunocompromised is now a 3-dose series, and these are the eligibility criteria. And again, those are being offered, those 3rd doses are also being offered at the Essex County sites. We also offer through the county mobile vaccination and testing sites. So every week they are changing their schedule and putting it on EssexCovid.org. So if you can't make it to the stationary sites, you can also attend any of these sites, and they have varying hours to fit varying schedules. So throughout the week, you can also call the health department and we can assist you in finding a vaccination or testing site based on your schedule. And here's information again on the school district's Medi-Mobile testing clinic at Columbia High School. This is again offered at 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Columbia High School from September through the month of October. And testing is open to all district staff, students, and Essex County residents, and no appointments are required. It's just walk up, it's fine. They also scheduled a St. Barnabas mobile vaccination clinic on Sunday, September 19th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and they'll return on October 10th. So we are really doing a push for getting people vaccinated and tested, especially with the upcoming school year. For health promotion and health education, I just want to give a big thank you to Marcel McNeil and all of our volunteers at the Summer Meals Program. We accomplished successfully 8 weeks of summer meals, breakfast and lunches for our community residents under 18. And I know that from a lot of families who gave testimony, it was a big help again this year. Thank you to the Department of Community Services and DPW for their assistance throughout this entire time, making it a great success. Speaking of other vaccine preventable diseases and prevention of communicable diseases, the township is running its drive-through flu clinic. It's our annual drive-through flu clinic. Last year's drive-through was a great success. We're doing it again on Saturday, September 18th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Town Hall in the parking lot off of Park Avenue. Just go to our parking lot. It's free for all township employees as well as those who are 65 and over, and $20 for anyone who can come and would like to get vaccinated. Walk-ups are also welcome. You don't need a car to attend. But we will not, just to clarify, offer a COVID vaccine here. It's just for the flu. For health education, I want to emphasize 3 events. September is National Sepsis Awareness Month. So if you are not aware, Sepsis Alliance is based in Maplewood, and they raise national awareness about the dangers of sepsis. Those who are vulnerable, immunocompromised, especially the young and the elderly, are at risk for sepsis. Sepsis might mistakenly be called a blood disease or blood infection, but is actually the body's overwhelmingly and life-threatening response to infection, which can cause and lead to tissue damage, organ failure, and death. Sepsis, unfortunately, is preventable if caught in time and early and recognized. So that's why I'm bringing it up, because if families are taught to recognize sepsis symptoms, it can prevent sepsis, which kills, unfortunately, 270,000 Americans each year. I want to emphasize for seniors that if you're making families aware that when a family member has symptoms of pneumonia or influenza, or even a urinary tract infection, when someone shows signs of sepsis, they may seem confused, irritable, disoriented. Do consider that, perhaps there is an underlying infection going on, and seek healthcare provider assistance immediately. For more information, you can go to sepsis.org. And please do take some time to review this. It's very important information. Likewise, September is National Suicide Prevention Month. As you know, the health department is a big advocate for this information. Just want to emphasize the suicide prevention talk line and lifeline is 1-800-273-8255 or 1-800-273-TALK. It's important that we reach out to one another, that we consider each other's mental health, and that we can't give up on each other, and we have to hold on to each other, and life is very precious. One of the things about the National Suicide Prevention Lifelines message for this year is be the one to, and I thought this was really a good succinct way for suicide prevention. They're asking people to do active activities and be proactive in being the one to ask if people are okay and if they want to talk, being the one to be there, being the one to keep them safe, being the one to help them stay connected, being the one to follow up and make sure that they're okay, and being the one to continue to learn more about how we can stop suicide in our community. Moving on to environmental health, I just wanted to emphasize that Lyme disease, as we mentioned, climate change, the weather is continually mild. And so the life cycle of animals, as well as vector-borne animals and diseases, unfortunately, are continuing longer and into the year. So we've had 5 cases of Lyme disease in the month of August. The state health department has information. You can look at that first website there for information on Lyme disease. But what we want to talk about is Lyme disease prevention. So they also offer information on how to check for ticks, how to dress for going outside and enjoying the outdoors, but doing it safely. And also how to remove a tick, because it's super important that when you do a tick check routinely after you're outdoors, to remove it carefully. So they have brochures that are easy to read. Please share it with your families and those who like to go outside and pursue outdoor activities. Please remember that ticks and other Lyme disease and vector-borne and tick-borne diseases are unfortunately out there. Finally, because of Tropical Storm Ida, we wanted to emphasize that the CDC has information on mold cleanup after a disaster. Not only do they provide you with information on what to wear, how to clean up, how much bleach to water you would need to clean it up, but they also provide other resources that might be helpful to people as they're cleaning up their private properties. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Ms. Davenport, thank you as always for yet again a fulsome report. I think the theme tonight thus far is that life is indeed precious. So we need to celebrate it and we need to take care of it. And continuing with our vaccination effort and testing for COVID in light of the Delta variant, and who knows what other mutations are coming down the pike, is really critical. I don't have any questions for you. I have a request, if I may. I'd like to see this presentation made available immediately in the morning on our township website. And if you would kindly work with township administration in blasting it by townwide email to folks. It has critical information about testing. It has critical information about making an appointment at the county sites, and it has critical information about the mold after the disaster mold cleanup. So unless there are any objections, I think that would be really good information to get out there as soon as we can. Does that work for you?
Yes, absolutely. I was writing it down. So I'll work with administration and put it up there, and we'll e-blast it out tomorrow. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to invite my colleagues for any questions or their remarks. Mr. DeLuca?
Yeah, I have two questions. Ms. Davenport, the flu shot, is there a senior variant for the flu shot?
So you're talking about the senior high dose? No, we
Yeah.
won't be offering. There is one, but we don't offer that because the vaccine that we order is for the general public. So it will be the quadrivalent. So it will have the 4 strains that are predominantly out there, but this one is for those who are 18 and over. So even seniors who have a healthy condition, they can take that. However, those who require a more concentrated dose as per their healthcare provider, they should get the more concentrated version, but that's the one we have.
Thank you. And then the second question, and maybe Mr. Jimes can jump in here. We agreed at the last Board of Health meeting that our employees had to be either vaccinated or be tested every week. And the president today, President Biden, adopted our program nationwide for employees and what have you. So I just want to get a sense of how well that's rolling out.
The policy was put in place last Friday. There have been, since that policy was put in place, there have been various meetings with bargaining units to discuss some impact issues of the policy, but the policy nonetheless is in place. We've received acknowledgement forms from the overwhelming majority of staff to this point, and we continue to implement that policy as instructed.
Thank you.
Naturally, with the weekly testing, obviously this week hit a little hiccups, so we're being fluid in how we enforce given the occurrences this week.
Ms. Adams?
Yeah, Mr. DeLuca, I like the way you credited Maplewood with President Biden's directives. That was a nice slip in there. Ms. Davenport, would you mind speaking a little bit on the Mu variant that is just coming out? It's either Mu or Mu. I think it's Mu. It's the Greek alphabet letter, right?
Yes, we're following the Greek alphabet. So the reason why I didn't mention that at this time, and I really want to emphasize the Delta, is because that's the one that we're seeing every time we test samples that perhaps are breakthrough cases. They just happen to all be Delta throughout the state of New Jersey. Delta variant is the predominant strain when we test for sequencing for samples. The reason why I couldn't really talk about the Lambda or the Mu is because the state divides them up into variants of interest and variants of concern. And right now there aren't enough cases, fortunately, in New Jersey to see that grow, but that's why they trend it at a weekly to see how many different types of variants they're able to pick up. So unfortunately, we have to keep our eye out for them, and they are there. I don't know the contagiousness, if it's increased or decreased, but if we can go by Delta, we really have to be very careful. Continue to wear a face mask, continue social distancing, continue to be careful when we go out into indoor as well as outdoor public settings. So once I find out more information on the variability of Mu, I'll let you know. But just going by what Delta is, we really should be very careful.
I think if you could just very briefly, and sorry to spring something on you, but just speak to the importance of everyone being vaccinated in order for these variants to stop forming themselves. That the reason they're able to is because so many people aren't vaccinated. And
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ms. Adams, you raise a very good point, and I will say it again, that when you have a community that's fully vaccinated, anytime a disease comes in, it has less opportunity because there's no opening. Everyone's vaccinated. With the vaccine, you are protected. And while you may get sick, if you're vaccinated, you have a mild case, but it does reduce the number significantly of hospitalizations and deaths caused by COVID. So when a community is protected, vaccinated, it is protected. The more people we have unvaccinated, then our protection is missing, and there's still holes in our community where the disease can enter. When you have stronger variants of the disease, it is more potent, more transmissible, faster spread, can cause maybe not as much death and hospitalization as the original, but it spreads faster. So the more open spaces we have due to unvaccinated people, you are open targets that allow the disease to come into our community. So can't emphasize it enough. To keep our community safe, we have to increase our vaccination rate even higher.
That's so true. I mean, the virus does not mutate if everyone is vaccinated. That's the bottom line. There are only mutations when there are unvaccinated people. And that threatens then vaccinated people, as we've seen with our breakthrough cases, which fortunately, compared to national trends, are not as high in our community right now, because we are such a majority of us are vaccinated in our community. So it's important to get the word out, and I'm glad that we are doing everything that we can to vaccinate folks here at the local level. The mobile testing and vaccination efforts have been incredible. And like I said, I think the more that we get this information out, the more we'll keep it front of mind for folks, because I think, some people believe that this is over, that we've returned to life as we knew it, but that's not the case. We are still dealing with COVID. We will still be masking. We will still be socially distancing, and our economy will not recover fully until we have turned the corner from COVID. And in order to turn the corner, we have to vaccinate. That's the bottom line. So in fact, President Biden didn't only adopt Maplewood's, as Mr. DeLuca put it, policy for federal employees, but for over 80 million employees at global private companies. That is significant and unprecedented. It really sends a strong message as to how important a vaccination policy and weekly testing is. So we're doing the best that we can at the local level, and we're happy to see that our federal and state partners are also doing the same.
Yeah, and we'll continue to keep pushing the vaccination and testing locally. I think that people are very receptive to having it localized. I do want to emphasize something that Mr. Daffa said, is that when people are unvaccinated, it not only gives the virus an access into the community, but that unvaccinated person allows it to mutate. So in your body, as you get more people who are unvaccinated, it continually mixes and has an opportunity to mutate. So the more unvaccinated people you have in your community, the more mutation you are able to have.
Thank you, Ms. Davenport. Are there any other questions from the Township Committee for Ms. Davenport?
Mr. Daffis, maybe not necessarily a question, but a statement adding to that point. And if there's one other reason just to get vaccinated is protect the children. Protect the children. They cannot get vaccinated, right? So do your part. Don't be selfish. Think about others. Get vaccinated.
Right. And that's really critical, Mayor, especially as our children are returning to school in person again. We're going to see an uptick in transmissions, at least until children below 12, younger than 12 rather, are able to be vaccinated themselves. So we want to definitely encourage people. And again, we'll end this by saying, if you were hesitant before, there's no shame in your becoming vaccinated now. It's okay. There was a lot of reasons for people to be hesitant, many, many reasons. But because of the hard work of so many health officers, local leaders, and health administrators at every level, we have tried our best to make vaccination accessible to all. So if you haven't done it before, there's no stigma or shame, and it's not too late. Do it now. Reach out to our health department. We will connect you, and you can be vaccinated free of charge. So with that,
Chairman Davis, I actually have 2 questions.
Certainly, Mr. Lundberg, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Davenport, the first of my 2 questions, and I know sometimes I ask you some of these sort of broader questions that go beyond Maplewood, and I apologize for that, but I assure you it's a vote of confidence in you, because I think that while a lot of Americans sort of are very comforted by seeing Dr. Fauci on television, I think myself and a lot of Maplewoodians are very comforted because, for the last 18 months, you've really been locally the person who comforts us, because, when we want facts, when we want science, and when we want guidance, you're really the person who is given it to us. So rather than go to the internet or listen to cable news, when I want facts about this, that it's affecting, whether it's, my family or things going on in town, I go to you and your staff, because I know that I can trust the information I get. So playing off of something the mayor actually just said about protecting the children, do you know what sort of the latest information is, as our kids are going back to school next Monday, particularly our elementary school kids, the kids who are under 12, like my daughter, who aren't yet eligible for the vaccine, but many of whom are asking every day, when can we get it, and who want to be vaccinated, both to protect themselves, but also, to be part of the solution. Do you have any sense of when that's likely to be approved, and also whether the state and the county are sort of working on the logistics of a rollout plan? Because that's going to be, right now I know we're sort of doing, drips and drabs trying to get the folks who haven't been vaccinated, but that's going to be now, suddenly a very large group again that's going to need to be vaccinated. And particularly if that comes along at the same time as some folks needing, whether it's a 3rd dose or a booster dose, we're going to be looking at a big influx of folks who need shots again. And do you have any sense of, is the county and the state sort of planning for that?
I think that they're definitely planning for it, but unfortunately, we're not receiving any good news, and we're eagerly anticipating it as well. They're not looking at it for coming up anytime soon for the opening of the school year, but potentially late fall is what they're anticipating, unfortunately. So with the rollout of the booster doses and the 3rd doses, there will be this massive rollout, and I think they're eagerly anticipating the number of people who want to get their child vaccinated. But unfortunately, I don't think that that's going to happen for probably another 2 months.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davenport. And my second question, is a little bit more local, and it's sort of a follow-up on a question that I asked a few months ago, and I made a note because you said ask again in September. So I'm going to ask again. Not because I necessarily think the answer has changed, but just to get maybe confirmation of that. And that's, I had asked, it was, late spring, early summer. I said, what would your guidance and advice be in terms of the township, whether it be for township committee or other township meetings, in terms of shifting back to in-person meetings versus entirely virtual meetings, whether to bringing meetings back to entirely in person or maybe a hybrid in-person virtual situation. And I just wanted to see if your guidance on that had changed from at the time being to keep things at the time all virtual, but you said, in the fall, come September, that there might be a change. I just wanted to see where you were at on that. And I think that, I, at least as a member of this committee, would follow your guidance on that.
Okay, yeah, so back when you had asked me in late spring and early summer, we were hoping, as what, President Biden had said, we will have more vaccination rate and a higher vaccination rate. Unfortunately, while we do have a high vaccination rate in our local area, there is the Delta variant. So, should we continue to social distance? I always am more conservative in that approach to continue to do that. Would it be bad if we got together for a meeting? No, I don't think it'd be bad, especially with the vaccination rate and everyone being vaccinated. It is safe to congregate, just not a large group. There would have to be some vetting of, how many people you want for public speaks and things like that. If you want to open that up to the public, we could do some contact tracing of the people who attend the meetings. But it is always my conservative approach to do the social distancing and remain online if possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Those
but
are
again,
my- Oh, go ahead.
but again, if you wanted to, do it in person and try it out, I think that we're set up in the township to do that. And we do have like airflow now that we could do that. But again, you don't have to do that. It's not 100% like, yeah, let's all go back. But as you know, township employees are back in the office. People are, going about doing stuff. So if you wanted to try it, I think that's something we could discuss.
Ms. Davenport, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I was going to thank Ms. Davenport for her response and let Chairman Daffis know that concludes my questions. But go ahead, Ms. Adams.
Thank you. I just had a quick follow-up because we're talking about potential in person and things like that. But I'm hearing that cloth masks, homemade masks are not effective really at all. And that's what's been sort of coming out lately, that really N95 masks are pretty much the only ones that really protect us, even vaccinated or not, with the Delta variant or any new variants coming along, that especially indoors and even outdoors to be masked if you can't be socially distant. So what are your thoughts on the masks? Do we have to, are these cloth masks that we're all wearing, kind of not so great?
No, I think, science is always evolving. So ask me next month and I might have more information. However, the masks that we have, the cloth masks, the surgical masks that we're all using, I think what is most important is the consistency of usage, right? So as long as you have a coverage properly put over your nose and mouth, especially when you're in outdoor public settings where there's a large crowd or where you can't keep 6 foot distance from someone, and when you're going indoors, it still works. I hesitate to say that only N95 masks work from this point forward, because I think that makes people, very concerned, like, oh my gosh, I have to run and get an N95 mask, when what we have works fine. We just have to consistently use it and not put our guard down, like, oh, I'm just going into my friend's house, I'm not going to put my mask on. When you go into someone's house, put your mask on. When you go into, a crowded event outdoors, put your mask on, especially if you can't keep 6 feet apart. So ask me that question again, in October. If we have more information about whether N95s are more effective, I will definitely let you know. But as of now, I don't want to alarm anyone by saying that our masks currently don't work. Keep wearing them, whatever you've got.
Thank you to my colleagues for your questions and your remarks in this great discussion. Continues highlighting how important this topic is in our community and communities throughout the nation and around the world. So at this juncture, I'd like to, it looks like we still have about 27 attendees, members of the public with us. I'd like to open the floor to the public to answer any questions, to ask any questions of Health Officer Davenport. Mr. Waltz, do we have any hands raised for questions to the Health Department?
I see no one at this time, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, well, that makes it pretty easy then. With that, I move that we adjourn this meeting and meet again on Tuesday, October 5th, our next BOH meeting.
Second.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Mayor McGee,
Yes.
Mr. Dax.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Mayor, turning it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. We'll now move on to agenda item number 8, which is reports from departments. We received our monthly budget report from our CFO, Mr. Kaloje. Is there any, Mr. Kaloje is not with us this evening, but is there any questions regarding the memo which all of us should have and have read? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Just for the public, the memo basically communicated that we are 8 months into our fiscal year and revenues and expenditure percentages should be at 67%. That certain revenues continue to underperform due to COVID, and also other factors. But the Jitney service is coming back online as of Monday, which will help with revenue, and we'll move forward from there. And also, he is evaluating the pool season, and we'll have more information for us next month now that the pool season's over. So that is the report which we received and the record for the public. We'll now move on to administrative reports, and we'll hear from our Township Administrator, Mr. Gimes. Mr. Gimes, you have the floor.
Mayor, if I may interrupt, did we miss item introduction of new ordinance?
That's pulled.
That is pulled. Okay, sorry. Okay.
No worries, Mr. Desiderio. All right, I will yield the floor to Mr. Gimes.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few brief things tonight. First off, on behalf of my office, I would like to express my condolences to Mr. Jeffrey and his family for their tragic loss. I would like to extend my gratitude to those residents who are in attendance tonight who, made the heroic effort to help our police department when they were in need. And I would also like to thank all of our staff on behalf of my office, from the Department of Public Works to the fire department and the police department. In my office, I'm on the administrative front lines, and sometimes those discussions and those interactions with those departments are mostly good, but sometimes they can be challenging. But they know it's all business, and they know that I support them fully in the job that they do. And they were all heroes over the last week. So I thank them immensely for their service. As it relates to the storm, as you know, we suffered significant damage. We discussed that in our recent OEM meeting. Today, we had our insurance risk manager out there looking at all the various buildings, the Woodland, the Civic House, the playground, the swimming pool damage, and some of our fields. Since the storm ended, we've been getting quotes, and we've deployed contractors, and we have contractors in the process of being deployed. And all of those losses that will probably be to the tune of at least 7 figures at this point, just a back of the napkin calculation is over $1 million, are expected to be insurable covered events. As you know, we have FEMA funds, but FEMA doesn't cover insurable offenses. So our insurance company will come first, and then FEMA will deal with any kind of overtime type expenses that insurance wouldn't cover. So we'll be utilizing every available resource we can to get funding. There may be a need to pass some ordinances in the meantime, from an emergency note standpoint, to fund some of these things before the insurance money comes in. But I was confident that in my discussions with our broker today, we're going to have, a lot of the funds in advance of when we need it. So, we're working hard on all fronts, all departments, to get those costs and work with our broker and, make sure, at some point we're made whole as it relates to infrastructure in this community. So we're working nonstop around the clock for that. We had a public safety committee meeting last night. Chairman Lembrecht will probably discuss some of the issues related to the fire department and the hiring during his report. So I'll hold off on any details on that. I'm going to draw your attention briefly to Resolution 261, the appliance bid. And the only reason I do that is because it's a consent agenda item. It was a sealed bid item, and it's one of those bids that we awarded to not the lowest contractor, but the second lowest contractor for $19,000 more. And the reason that was done was because there was a fatal flaw in the low bid. The township attorney deemed that it was not compliance for a failure to list subcontractors, which in all bids is a fatal flaw. It's one of the key items that needs to be in a bid. So unfortunately, we were left to go with the second bid, which is a higher bid of about $19,000. On the agenda towards discussion items tonight is the information regarding 7 West Parker and the area in need of redevelopment. And the planner is in the process, is here tonight, and we'll be discussing that. And I'm going to do a very quick screen share. I want to give you a brief update on our web design project. I'm just going to show you, there's not a lot to talk about. I know some of you have seen this already. So just give me 1 second, it won't take long. So this is a mock-up start of our new website. A couple of changes we're going to have to go through. But there's a main picture there. This is how it's going to look as you scroll down. Still in the process of working some of the inside stuff. When you do the hover over one of the sections, you'll see something that looks like this as you hover over these. So these are just fillers at the moment. So we're making a lot of progress here. Myself, Assistant Administrator Barnett, I've been working, very tirelessly on this, with our vendors. So we're pretty excited about how this is going to look, and I'm pretty confident, in addition to the aesthetically pleasing improvement, you're going to find it internally to be much easier to navigate, and I think the public is going to find it much easier to navigate as well. We got a really cool service finder up there in the top right, and that will look something like this when it's clicked on. So you just be able to type in what you're looking for, and that will appear. So, I did send out the link to those on the communications committee. That link is still active. There's another link I can send you where you can make some comments, on anything you see that, you'd be interested in. So that pretty much concludes my report. I'm sorry, one more thing on the agenda management system with the same vendor. We're working through that. There's one more training session to go. And I think if not the next meeting, the following meeting, we'll be able to roll that out as a beta test and do the agenda process there. So we're pretty excited about those things moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Gimes. Any questions for Mr. Gimes? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to Mr. Desiderio.
Mayor, I do have one item this evening. As everyone I think knows, the town is about to, through hands, its agent will be conveying title to 129 Franklin Terrace, which is an affordable housing unit that the township undertook to flip over to for affordable housing. A little wrinkles come up with regard to the tax issue. Because the new purchaser will pay taxes based on the sale price, which is substantially less than the assessed value, their lender is requesting that we generate a letter to the lender indicating that the taxes will be adjusted on the sale price. The collectors indicated that he cannot do that without township approval. So right now, the property is assessed at $315,600, and taxes are based on that assessment. The sale price will be $206,562. If you consent and do this resolution, the taxes will be recalculated on that amount, and subsequent to the closing, the taxes will be adjusted accordingly. The assessor, when he gets the deed, will make the change on the records. However, deeds coming up from Essex County have been somewhat slow. So, like I said, the anticipated closing is September the 14th or 15th. So what I'm asking is, will you entertain a motion to allow the collector to adjust the taxes based on the proposed sale price of $206,562 subsequent to the closing of title?
So I'll make that motion, but Mr. Desiderio, one other point. The sale is the house is deed restricted. So
Yes.
any future sale cannot go above that 206,000. So that's the reason why we're doing this. Could you explain that part?
Right. Consistent with what Mr. DeLuca said, there will be a provision in the deed wherein it will say that the property cannot be sold. I believe it's a 30-year deed restriction.
Yes.
If it is sold, it will have to be on a restricted price basis, so that the person who's presently going to be buying it is not going to receive a windfall. It will be consistent with that, and the taxes will be adjusted accordingly.
Right. So therefore, that's why the taxes would be on the sale price as opposed to the market, because we remove the market price.
Right. Correct. Correct. Well, or right. Another way of saying it is the market price is in fact the sale price because of the restriction. Correct.
So I move it.
But the assessment, our assessments typically aren't what the sale price is for the houses right now, correct?
Well, they could be higher, they could be lower. That's why we have tax appeals.
Right. Well,
the answer is the assessment with the ratio is supposed to reflect the fair market value. Yes.
This one's going to be tied exactly to the fair market value.
This will be adjusted to the fair market value. That's
Because the fair market value of this house is never going to be below the $206,000 and change. I mean, the real estate market's never going to collapse that much to bring this house below that. So it's always going to be high. You know, if this house wasn't deed restricted, the fair market value would always be higher than that, but it can't be sold for higher than that. So that's the highest price it's going to be sold for the next 30 years. So the tax value and what it can be sold for is always going to be the same, right?
Yes.
I can never say never. I'm sorry, Mr. Lembrick, I can't. There are market adjustments. The house could burn down. There's any number of possibilities that could affect the assessment. So, but the concept, as Mr. DeLuca and I have laid it out, is that the fair market value of the house is 206,562 as of the closing date.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. A very happy family with children are going to be happy about us moving this resolution. So, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Was there a second? I'm sorry. I heard Mr.
I seconded.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yes.
Mr. Dax,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Desiderio.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on and hear from our township clerk, Ms. Fritzen.
Thank you, Mayor, and it's nice to have company for a change at a meeting. So the first thing I want to report that tomorrow.
So weird. I'm sorry, Ms. Fritzen.
I agree.
You're floating in the middle of the.
I agree.
Well, she's more than 6 feet apart, so we're good.
Well, then just, yeah, but you don't, okay. Never mind.
Tomorrow, we'll be holding our employee appreciation barbecue afternoon that we do annually. Tomorrow is, I believe, the 16th year of this program. So again, thanking employees for everything that they do is just one way that the township shows the appreciation tomorrow. So municipal offices will close at noon tomorrow for the afternoon. Today was a greenhouse sign up. So if for some reason you didn't make it to the sign up, which was late in the afternoon into this evening, you call the township clerk's office and we'll direct you. I'm sure there will still be greenhouse spaces available. As mentioned, the jitney starting on the 13th. We have been selling some jitney passes as well as some combos and just a lot of event applications. You all get copies of what's going on, so many different things, runs, walks, biking, and we had a very successful MAPSO program in Maple Crest Park a couple of weeks ago that went off very, very well. So again, we are certainly getting a lot of applications for groups that want to continue with outdoor events mostly. And that is my report.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Any questions for Ms. Fritzen? All right. She's going to float back over to her side of the room. All right. We'll now move on to agenda item number 10, reports from elected officials. I yield the floor.
Hey, am I going first this time, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll have a few reports that are related to the Public Safety Committee. We met last night. It's pretty rare for the Public Safety Committee, which meets on the second Wednesday of the month, to meet before the Township Committee, which meets on the first Tuesday of the month. But this is an interesting month. We heard from the fire department, gave us a report not only about the month of July, but also about their response to Tropical Storm Ida. And we've already heard quite a bit tonight about some of the heroism of the fire department, as well as the other departments of the township, as well as our residents in dealing with that event last week. Also heard about the fire that occurred yesterday. Fortunately, it was a rather small fire that didn't result in any loss of life or serious injury that occurred in the village. Also, on the fire department portion of the agenda, we talked about some staffing, promotion, and hiring issues within the fire department. As certainly anyone on this panel knows, and most people in the public know, that Maplewood is aggressively pursuing a consolidation of our fire department with that of the South Orange Fire Department. And we are hoping to have that completed by the end of this year. So, and currently, if we're going to merge our table of organization with theirs, we're not looking to over promote such that we're going to be having too many chiefs or deputy chiefs or people at other positions in a combined department. But one position that we do want to hire for, we're going to have an opening for an entry-level firefighter, and that's a position that we're always going to need, and we don't want to be caught short of, particularly knowing we're going to have more retirements coming later this year and next year. So the Public Safety Committee's recommendation, and I would make a motion tonight, is that we currently have a list that's good through next April, and that we direct the chief to start contacting. We've already done interviews of the people on that list, at least some of the next couple of candidates, that we direct the chief to contact the people on that list, one at a time. And the first person, the highest rated person from our list who's available and wants to go, that we send that person to the next available academy and have them ready. Generally, depending on when an academy starts, it generally takes at least 3 to 4 months from the time we decide to push the button on hiring a firefighter to when we can actually bring them on board. So it's going to take some time from the time we tell the chief to do this to the time someone's actually ready to join us. So we want to get this rolling so we don't get caught short-staffed next year. So my motion, which I'm hoping I'll have a second and support for tonight, is to direct the chief to proceed with the hiring of an entry-level firefighter from the existing list.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lindbrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Mr. Lindbergh, you said.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot has been said tonight about Tropical Storm Ida and the response, and we discussed it last night at length at Public Safety, and also last week during the Office of Emergency Management meeting. So I don't want to steal anyone else's thunder, but certainly just to echo some of what's already been said, that our first responders did an exceptional job, in a storm that, we knew a storm was coming, but I don't think any of us knew the severity of the storm that we were going to get, or particularly how hard hit Maplewood was going to get. And in prior tropical storms and even hurricanes, we've borne the brunt of some very high winds and the damage that winds can bring, but the amount of water and flooding that we dealt with in this storm, it was really something that caught us off guard. But from what we're hearing, it's the sort of thing that we're going to need to be prepared for. So I think that we all need to be committed as a governing body and as a township to as we go into future budget cycles and thinking strategically, to making sure that our township, and particularly our first responders, have the equipment and have the training they need to do the job and do the kind of response and rescue they need. We're never going to have a Coast Guard in Maplewood that that's trained, fully trained in water rescues, but having some more equipment so that our first responders aren't having to borrow equipment from residents, surfboards and life jackets and stuff, I think is something that we can do and should do. Continuing on with public safety, as part of the police report, we discussed back to school. And one thing, we did send around a press release about this, but it can't be repeated enough that as our children go back to school next week, I just want to urge everyone to be patient when driving around anywhere near our schools, particularly for the first days and probably weeks of the school year. There's going to be different patterns around the schools. Particularly with the fact that a lot of our kids haven't been to school full time for a while, and the fact that late in the spring, early in the summer, as school was winding down, is when we broke ground with the district on a lot, particularly at our elementary schools, on some of the capital projects where we're going to be doing construction work at a number of our schools. That means a lot of the parking lots and some of the streets around the schools are going to be affected. So where teachers and staff used to park is no longer available to them. They're going to have to park and get to the schools in different ways. So just be aware there's going to be different traffic patterns, different parking patterns around the schools. So please be aware of that. If you have to be going around the schools, just be patient. There's going to be crossing guards. There's going to be police officers. Please obey. If there's signs, if there's cones, don't be in a rush. Don't drive through signs. Don't move cones. Listen to the police officers. Obey the instructions of the crossing guards. And for those of you who want to just avoid the frustration and don't need to be going to the schools to drop off or pick up students, or are able to drop off or pick up your students a few blocks away, and you can avoid going around the schools, save yourself the hassle, and just avoid going in the immediate area of the school, because at least for the first few days and probably the first few weeks, there's going to be confusion and congestion. So with that takes me through the main portions of the Public Safety Committee meeting last night. The last thing I would want to say before giving up the floor, Mr. Mayor, on a cheerier note regarding back to school is our kids are finally going back to school on Monday, full time, and I want to wish all of our youth, all of our community's teachers and educators and administrators and staff a very successful and healthy 2021-2022 school year. And Mr. Mayor, that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Lundbrick. We'll now hear from Mr. DeLuca.
I think it was Ms. Adams, but I'm certainly willing to go.
I remember it. I unmuted and everything.
Go ahead.
No, Ms. Adams, I yield the floor to you.
Okay. Not that it matters. We all used to talk anyway. So I only have, because my committee meets after this, as opposed to Mr. Lundbrick's, but mostly I just want to let everybody know that at the October 5th Township Committee meeting. Zero Waste Associates, the shared consultant we hired to guide us through figuring out better practices to save money and better environmentally with regard to recycling, garbage, organic waste. They'll be doing a presentation to us at our next Township Committee, our October 5th meeting, which will be joined by the entire governing body in South Orange. So the South Orange Board of Trustees will join us for this meeting. So we'll have part of our Township Committee meeting in October will be a joint meeting. So at that, it'll be at the beginning of the meeting, and the consultant will give a 5 to 10 minute presentation. We've been meeting with this consultant. There's been a subcommittee group. We've met every 2 weeks for the last several months to dig through statistics and information and potential solutions to our many problems with regard to this issue. And so what they'll be doing is giving you a presentation and also kind of telling you where the subcommittee is kind of going and what your input as a governing body and as South Orange Board of Trustees, what input they might have and what direct questions to the consultant that everyone will be able to ask them. So that presentation will sort of guide us on our next steps, whether we do shared services or whatever, and that would be beginning in 2023. So I know Mr. Kittner is aware that he'll have to go out for bid for recycling collection for 2022. Right now, our contract with Basso has already been extended 1 year and expires. So he'll be putting that out to bid along with Mr. Jimes. We can extend Giordano's contract, I believe, through 2022. So that's where we are with that. And that'll be an interesting discussion and a really important one to help us all get our garbage, recycling and trash and those associated costs under control. So, and there's some complications with that. So other than that, I just want to extend my condolences to all the families who suffered so much, not only damage to their properties and all the stress of what we all went through in and knowing that at our OEM meeting, we all decided that we're going to take, we were not warned properly on this storm, and as was most of New Jersey, I think we'll be taking a conservative approach going forward, which is to notify residents of storms that might be worse than anticipated and to protect ourselves. So if there's any good thing that came out of that, it sort of lets us all know that we have to be better prepared individually, by household, and as a township. So my condolences go out to all the families who lost loved ones in that. And it was a really terrible night and a terrible experience for all of us. So that's my report.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. We'll now hear from Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you. I should have gone first because Ms. Adams stole my thunder here on emergency management. So a couple of things. We are now, as Mr. Jimes said, we are filling out our various forms that we have to do. We're well over $1 million in just both our damages, our costs, and to the homes. You know, and I want to also express my condolences to the Jeffrey family and to all others who have had loved ones who were affected by this storm. In addition to what Ms. Adams said, it's a learning experience for us about how we are not going to wait for the county on some of these storms, because quite honestly, the county did not call us together as an emergency management. So we're going to just continue to work, be a little more proactive locally, because these storms are getting worse. And we know the hot spots, and the wet spots. So we're going to be more attuned to these planning efforts. I did want to speak as the chair of the Engineering and Public Works Committee. There was a earlier reference to a meeting with DEP about the Maple Terrace drainage. I spoke to the engineer and our consultant today. We are contacting the DEP to have another meeting with them. The situation has changed from our earlier meeting, and we're going to impress upon the DEP that we have to make some changes here, and they have to at least work with us and can't keep putting up these obstacles to all of our suggestions. So we're working to schedule that and get that going. A couple other things from Engineering and Public Works. Our roads and sewer projects are beginning. You'll be seeing those around town. I would advise you, if you can stay away from the Boyden Avenue and Irvington intersection at the foot of Boyden Avenue. We're going to be doing a major sewer repair there. It's going to entail actually 3 municipalities, because we have Maplewood, Irvington, and Union, because we'll be sending cars into Union for detours. So try to stay away from that. That's going to be a long process. Months. We're also starting our road program, so we'll be paving, and New Jersey American Water is also out there doing some work. So this is the time of year when it can get challenging to drive around, because this is when we do a lot of our paving work. Those of you who heard that we were dedicating the plaza at Town Hall to Jerry Ryan, we haven't forgotten that. We now have come to an agreement with the Historic Preservation Commission as to the best way to install the plaque that's going to honor Jerry. And it will be on the plaque set in the ground, in the pavement, about 10 feet or so off of Valley Street, in the center there of that lower plaza. So we have the wording. We're going to be moving forward as we do the work there. So hopefully, certainly before the end of the year, we'll have a ceremony for that. I wanted to congratulate the folks who put together Porch Fest 2021. This was our 4th one. It really was great. We had over 50 bands. We had over 35 homes throughout the Hilton neighborhood. It was a really nice time to get out there and enjoy what was going on. We had conversation earlier and closed about arts and culture, and this really, really personified the level of sophisticated level of art and culture in our community. So I want to thank Susan and Ben Williams, who worked really hard on this, Bill Talley, who actually came up with the idea many years ago, and other members of the Maplewood Community Band. Lastly, the library, we took a beating on the storm. I was in there today in the basement, wrapped up, doing some investigation there. We brought our architects and engineer there. We're having a meeting next week to look at some changes in the design of the new building to make sure that we are more resilient than even what we were planning before. This was a storm where it came in, we could see the pattern of how it came in from the outside, and we will be working to make sure that this gets addressed as we go forward. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. We'll now hear from Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. I have spoken to affected residents and expressed my condolences intimately, privately, personally, and as well as my salute to the officers and first responders and residents involved in search and rescue on Wednesday night. So I'm not going to go into that again because I don't think I'm going to get through it. I'm going to yield the rest of my time to the discussion agenda where I have several items that I will be leading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. All right. right, I have a few things I want to cover. First and foremost, the Township Committee is in the process of executing a bulk pickup. This is now in day 2 is going to be tomorrow. We'll be in section 6, speaking with the head of our public works. They did significant progress, but there's still a lot more to come. So they'll be in section 6 tomorrow, and then moving into section 5 on Saturday. In regards to the sections, this is based on how our leaf pickup occurs. And so when you look at those maps, it will give you a better idea of what section you're in. We have sent out communication. We will send out communications on a daily basis, which will be inclusive of the map for those who are not cognizant. We are also posting on social media as well. We are coming to you because obviously the amount of destruction, if you will, is pretty significant. So we're coming to you. It's a one-time pickup. It's Tropical Storm Ida items only. If for some reason that we've already gone through your section, you find other stuff related to Hurricane Ida, we have a bulk drop-off on next Saturday, September 18th. But as we talked about earlier in our meeting, and talking about our first responders, our DPW has been doing a phenomenal job. They've been working every single day, and obviously we'll be continuing to work every single day up to the 18th and likely through that as well. One of the questions that I've received and I want to give an update on is, where is our status with FEMA? I've reached out to the Chief of Staff of Essex County again today, also to several contacts in the Governor's office. I'm awaiting for that official head nod. There was an assessment that was done in Essex County a couple of days ago. It was a spot assessment. So some towns were included, including South Orange. We were not, but that doesn't mean that we will not receive FEMA status once Essex County is added to the list of 6. There are a total of 21 counties, and right now only 6 of the 21 counties have received FEMA status. So that will be ongoing push by me to make sure that we are included and receive that status. It opens up funds for us as residents, as businesses, as a municipality. We conducted our seed meeting last August, Committee on Entrepreneurship and Economic Development, and one of the discussion items which Mr. Chimes talked about coming out of that meeting was our recommendation to move forward to discuss a need of rehabilitation for 7 West Parker, and we'll discuss that. Also, the Master Plan Committee will reconvene starting next Tuesday on the 14th of September, as we start our process to flush out RFP for the master plan. A couple of things I want to also add on is that I want to first recognize the Junior League for their efforts. The Junior League of the Oranges and Short Hills, in effort to recognize the work of our first responders, will be holding several thank you appreciation lunches for firefighters as well as police officers. And I just want to recognize Larissa, who is a Maplewood resident, for spearheading that. We appreciate that. And our first responders also appreciate that as well. I also want to congratulate Nicole Wallace and the committee that worked from the Springfield Avenue Partnership, worked with Main Street, New Jersey. We are now Springfield Avenue. The business district is now a new Main Street, New Jersey district. This opens up funding for us to do exciting things on the avenue, such as placemaking and wayfinding, which will enhance Springfield Avenue. So congratulations to our city manager, Nicole Wallace, and Annette DePalma and the team that worked so tirelessly to get us this status and be one of the new districts for NSMJ. I also want to recognize and congratulate Maplewood and former Maplewood residents, Kiana and Karan Hill, for their efforts. They put together the first annual MAPSO Legends Tournament Day. I was joined by Mr. Daffis and Ms. Adams. It was a wonderful event where we got to see so many of current and past Maplewood residents come together in fellowship, and also, in playing ball over at Memorial Park in the cage, as we call it. It was really an event put together to remember Maplewood residents who've lost their lives recently that were very special to the community, such as Daniel Ives, as we know, who lost his life a year ago. And it was just a really wonderful event. You saw all the families come out. They were presented with plaques, proclamations, and each team of the 8 teams, there was 8 teams in a double elimination. They all had different jerseys with the nickname or something that was associated with the 8 residents who they were honoring who had passed away, Maplewood and South Orange recently. So I just want to say, congratulations to Keon and Karan Hill for all their efforts in that regard. I'm going to share my screen really quick here. I think this is an important thing to highlight. So if you can see, we're going to be having a 9/11 event this Saturday. It's going to be 8:30 at the Hilton Library branch. We'll have speakers, we'll have music, and we'll have reflective thoughts about what happened on that day 20 years ago. So please join us at 8:30 on Saturday where we do our 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony. I also want to mention that we, this year, the Y is postponing their duck race. It's something that we look forward to. We're hoping we can have it, but just with the impact of Tropical Storm Ida, safety is first. And through an assessment evaluation based on what occurred in Memorial Park, we felt it was in the best interest to cancel the duck race this year. We know that it'll be back next year. So we just wanted to recognize the efforts and just let the public know that that has been canceled. So the last thing that I want to touch on is there is a young person in Maplewood who lost their grandmother to COVID. And she was trying to find a way for those who've lost those of COVID to, to come together and be together and, and maybe grieve or just talk about their situation. So next Sunday, September 19th at 4:30 p.m. in Maplewood Memorial Park, there's going to be a picnic in the park. The group is called Holding Their Hands, and they're hosting a picnic in the park for teens who've lost loved ones to COVID-19. Food and snacks will be provided. So if you know anyone in town who's lost someone, a teenager who's lost someone to COVID, please let them know that this event will be happening. We will send out a communication. I'll post this as well, but this is by Holding Their Hands, a picnic in the park led by Julia Roses. So thank you so much. And that will conclude my report. We are now on to our discussion items. Our first discussion item is petition receipt and next steps. And I will yield the floor to Ms. Fritzen.
Thank you, Mayor. I did advise the Township Committee that the petition signatures that were submitted were sufficient, and there will be a ballot question at the November 2nd general election.
Mayor, just a follow-up to that. The language for the question is actually contained in the statute, and it will say, to vote on the question below, if in favor, mark an X or a plus mark in the square at the left of the word yes, and if opposed thereto, mark an X or plus in the square to the left at the word no. Shall an ordinance of the Maplewood Township Committee of the Township of Maplewood entitled Bond Ordinance providing for various capital improvements in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $2,025,000 thereof and authorizing issuance of $1,923,750 of bonds or notes of the township to finance a part thereof be ratified. And that is the language from the statute. There's no ifs, ands, or buts as to that language. Now, if in fact the Township Committee wishes to send down to the clerk a interpretive statement, they are permitted to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. And what I will do now is I will share my screen of that interpreted statement so we can look at it and then have a brief discussion and take a vote. So bear with me, I try to share my screen here and sharing. So can you see my screen? Anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is the interpreted statement that has been vetted by everyone on the Township Committee for our conversations. And this is the interpreted statement which I would like to be moved and seconded so we can move forward to putting this on with the question for the general ballot.
So I move that the question go on the November 2021 ballot and that this be the interpretive statement.
I second.
Second.
All right. Mr. Mayor, before we go to vote, do you mind reading this in the record?
Sure, I'll read into the record. That'll be my pleasure. On July 20th, 2021, the Maplewood Township Committee voted 4-1 in favor of ordinance 3040-21, which authorized the issuance of $1,923,750 in bonds, $1,710,000 of which is to finance the construction of an artificial turf athletic field at the Hart Park. 4 Township Committee members supported the artificial turf athletic field to meet the growing demand for recreational and organized sports activities for youth in our community. 1 Township member supported keeping and making improvements to the grass field to meet that demand. As permitted by state law, a group submitted a valid petition to have a referendum question placed on the ballot as to whether or not the township should fund this project. A yes vote is in favor of funding the artificial turf athletic field at the Hart. A no vote is against funding the artificial turf athletic field at the Hart Park. If the referendum passes, the Township Committee will move forward with designing the artificial turf athletic field through continued discussions with the community, and then going out to bid for the construction of the field. If the referendum does not pass, the Township Committee will discuss with the community other measures to improve the field at the Hart Park. So with that, I will call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Dacus?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritson.
Thank you.
All right. And I just lost my agenda right here. Well, now,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I just have to make one comment because there was some confusion and some issues that almost kept this referendum from being on the November 2nd ballot. The full Township Committee wasn't made aware of the deadline of August 27th that we needed to hold a meeting to pass the resolution we just passed to ensure that our residents' voices were heard and that it will be on the November 2nd ballot. I reached out to, and as many, according to our county clerk, Chris Durkin, I reached out to him, and so did several residents who were concerned that something was going wrong and that we weren't doing what we needed to do to honor the work of the residents and to make sure that no votes were stifled, no opinion kept off this by making sure it was on the November 2nd ballot and avoiding the cost of a special election to call this question. So this wasn't, I'm concerned about the procedure and the making sure that everybody knows what the procedure needed to be and what the deadline was, because this shouldn't have happened. So I'd like to ask the administration and Mr. Desiderio just internally review what happened here, and also more importantly, to put procedures in place, whether codify them or put them in so that this never happens again. These internal procedures for future administrations, future township committees, so that this doesn't happen when our clerk certifies signatures. Any future township committee needs to know of any deadline and any special meetings that need to be called of this body in order to make sure it gets on the ballot that the residents intended. So I just wanted to put that on the record because there were mistakes made that we need to avoid in the future.
Actually, there were not any mistakes made. I think it's a valid procedure, but the point of fact was that there was no August deadline. The clerk's office, when I say the clerk's office, the county clerk's office was looking at the wrong law. They were looking at Title 19 and not Title 40. So after conversations with Mr. Durkin and his research, we were never in jeopardy of this not being on this election. So there were no mistakes made with regard to this particular referendum.
Well, that's really good to know. And just to that point, it would have been nice to have known that. Like, we should have been made aware that if I hadn't brought this up just now, you wouldn't have said what you said. So we should have been made aware that there was an error. We were just made aware of a lot of people panicking and phone calls being made and all that kind of stuff. So,
well, I apologize, but I actually thought I sent a note out saying there would be no need for a special meeting. But if I did not, I apologize. It certainly was not my intention to create any confusion.
We knew that we did get notified on the township committee that no special meeting would be needed by us, but we weren't given any reason as to what happened.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Ms. Adams, and thank you, Mr. Desideri.
Yeah, if I could just, I think that, we're under a spotlight on this, let's face it. And I think that we could have been a little more proactive in our messaging externally. And I felt a little bit that we were always behind the 8 ball on this one. We may, and the good thing is we can get it on November. We came to an agreement on an interpretive statement, but I felt that we were always playing catch up on this. And it's just for public confidence in our ability to run government and to honor the wishes of the people. We've got to be better, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Desideri. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Any other comments? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to discussion item number 2, which is Gleason Cleaners, and I'll yield the floor to Mr. Gimes.
Thank you, Mayor. First, if I could ask Ms. Barnett or Mr. Walls to bring Nicholas Dickerson from Colliers Engineer over to discuss the report as a panelist.
I'm going to do that right now.
Okay, so as you know, the Township Committee authorized us to get a proposal for this project. That proposal was sent out, and the overall recommendation was to designate the area as an area in need of redevelopment. Mr. Dickerson from Colliers Engineers, who worked on that report, is here tonight. If you want to provide us kind of a background of the report, what you've done, and any recommendations that the governing body needs, please do so. And then afterwards, obviously, the Township Committee can ask questions as they so choose.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. Once again, my name's Nicholas Dickerson. I'm a planner with Colliers Engineering and Design, and just want to give you a high-level summary of the work that's been done so far. So just as a quick overview of the redevelopment process and this project, this is a very preliminary step in determining in the redevelopment process. An investigation comes after a request of a certain site, which this board authorized earlier this year. And the investigation is that first step where some data is collected. It's then reviewed at a public hearing before the planning board. The planning board makes their recommendation to the governing body, and then the governing body looks at that recommendation and decides is it a need of redevelopment or is it not? And then from there, any sort of redevelopment plan and other actions under the local redevelopment housing law can be adopted. So what we're here today, or what I'm here today to present, is just a status update on where we are with the 7 Parker Avenue West study. Our office has looked at the site from a number of different angles. We look at property records, we look at environmental constraints, we look at we visit the site both externally and internally, how it fits in with the surrounding area, how it fits into the municipal master plan, a bunch of different things to understand what is on the site and what might be interfering with its development. Because under the local redevelopment housing law, there are certain criteria that need to be met in order to be deemed an area in need of redevelopment. Without going into too much detail on what those criteria are, there's a number of them. They can be whether it's structural defects, vacancy, abandonment, vacant property, obsolete layout design, proper utilization of the site. Is it being utilized correctly? Has it been destroyed in some sort of natural event? Is it part of an urban enterprise zone? Or would the designation help to reinforce policies related to smart growth? So we looked at the site. Like I said, looking at those records, we have visited the building and have actually examined it from the inside as well, and have developed our preliminary report. And from what we see, we will make the recommendation that it does meet the criteria for redevelopment on a number of different levels. There were noticeable structural defects with the property. I mean, there was noticeable damage on the inside. The type of use as a on-site cleaner is probably something that is not going to be repurposed for that use again, now that a lot of dry cleaners tend to have a small office location and then send dry cleaning off to another location to have it cleaned and then brought back. We think that there would be, its designation would also help to advance numerous smart growth goals and objectives that have been promulgated by the state and numerous other agencies and organizations in the state. And also, yeah, I think, and then just there's some other issues related to the history of contamination and actually its presence in a floodplain, which would hamper its redevelopment as is. So there's a number of different things that we're noting and will be outlined in our report that will be presented to the planning board at a public hearing. But we, based on what we have seen so far, we do believe that it would not only, it would meet numerous criteria for designation as an area in need of redevelopment. So that's the real quick summary. If there are any questions or clarification, I can offer them, but just wanted to give you a little status update on where this is and what we've done to date.
Thank you, Mr. Dickerson. Is any questions for Mr. Dickerson? Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you. Just Mr. Dickinson, first of all, I thought the report was very good. We're discussing a non-eminent domain, right? We're not looking to do any taking here, correct?
Yes, it's my understanding this would be, it was authorized by the committee as a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment study.
members of the Township Committee, there is a resolution on the consent agenda where you have the authority to refer this matter to the planning board to conduct a hearing pursuant to the statute that was referred to. The planning board has an obligation to set that hearing up and then to report back to you as a result of that hearing, giving notice to the appropriate parties. So you can pull it off if you want to do it separately, or you can do it as part of the consent agenda.
Let's just do it on the consent agenda, unless someone wants further discussion now.
Agreed.
Okay.
Mr. Dickerson, thank you for your report. It's very thorough. We had reviewed it previously in our seed meeting, and we look forward to next steps.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too.
All right, well, now we move on to discussion item number 3. I will yield the floor to Mr. Daffis regarding Community Board of Police ordinance revision.
Thank you, Mayor. This should be quick because we've already, as you recall, voted on this before. I think it was back in May, earlier this year. What did we vote on? We voted on whether or not to, in accordance with the new directives sent down by the Attorney General's office as it relates to civilian review boards, we voted in favor, and it was a unanimous vote, to give our local board the power and duties that the Attorney General's office has authorized. That includes the ability of such boards to conduct independent reviews of IA, internal affairs investigations, once they have been completed. Since then, Township Attorney Mr. Desiderio and Community Board on Police Counsel Mr. Grodman have worked a lot to produce a proposed ordinance that would revise our powers and duties to include that function. The way that it would work is that a subcommittee would be created, which would be the Civilian Review Board subcommittee. It would only be that subcommittee that would have access to the internal affairs investigation function. The subcommittee would be comprised of 3 persons. Those 3 persons would be appointed to that subcommittee at the pleasure of the Community Board on Police. Reminder that we, the Township Committee, interview everyone who is appointed on the Community Board on Police. So the 3 persons who would be on the subcommittee would be among existing appointed members by the Township Committee on the Community Board on Police. There are other rules and regulations that govern the conduct of this subcommittee, including required background investigations and so on and so forth. And our revised ordinance, which Mr. Desiderio has forwarded to everyone prior to tonight for their review, would adopt all of those rules. We incorporate those rules by reference. We recognize that these rules change constantly. So the idea here is that our ordinance will remain living and breathing as things evolve. So I move that we introduce the ordinance that Mr. Desiderio has prepared and asked us to review at our next Township Committee on October 5th. The ordinance has been vetted by the Community Board on Police in its current version, and everyone is ready to move forward.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
What am I voting on? Putting it on for ordinance for first reading? Why do I vote on that? I'm in favor of putting it on. I just feels weird to vote for putting it on.
We typically instruct Mr. Desiderio to prepare it and put it on.
Right, but we don't usually vote on that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do. We did that with the tree ordinance.
Okay, all right. I won't argue. I'm fine. Yes.
Mr. Daffis.
Yes, sorry.
I would hope so.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Moving on to discussion item number 5, cannabis adult use regulations released by the state. Next steps, Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. We're not voting on anything tonight, nor have we come to an agreement on a plan to move forward as it relates to our opting back in, now that we know that the rules have been released, at least the initial rules. Not all of them have been released. But I wanted to share with the community that on August 19th, surprisingly, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission did release its initial regulations governing adult recreational use of cannabis products. It's a 160-page tome that's available on the state's website, on the Regulatory Commission's website. But some of the highlights that I wanted to highlight here tonight include how they have managed to deal with some of the equity issues, the social justice issues. They will be prioritizing, the state will be prioritizing applications from people with prior convictions, certainly prioritizing and setting aside approvals to certified minority women, disabled, veteran-owned businesses, and others. The application requirements will be flexible to include micro businesses and flexible application fees as low as $100. Again, making it as equitable as possible. As I said in the beginning, not all of the regulations have been released. When people go and look at the state site, they will notice that there isn't a lot of information for wholesalers as it relates to the wholesalers, distributors, or the delivery service part of the business. They're going to get to that. This is the first round and more regulations are coming. The initial regulations do include minimum standards for providing secure transport and home delivery of cannabis items. Again, we stress and we get these calls, and I think we have someone here from the community who has reached out to me before, as she mentioned earlier. We don't approve the license, the state does. So these licenses will come from the state. However, as part of the application process, local approval is part of that. So having that local municipal approval is going to be important. And that can be provided easily by a letter. Apparently, a host agreement isn't necessarily necessary this time around. And you know, there is in the regulations, I was very pleased to see this, wide latitude at the local level for us to make some decisions to see what's appropriate to us. We get to decide what classes of businesses are allowed in our community. We get to decide how many of them. We get to decide the location and the hours of their operation, right? We get to levy local taxes up to 2% of retail sales. And we get to, so long as we're not burdensome, we get to also add an extra layer of licensing requirements. We can require certain things as it relates to parking, as it relates to waste disposal. That must be news to Ms. Adams, our environmental advocate and leader, right? Because we can talk about those kinds of things and make sure that they are being as green as they can be. As it relates to security and other local issues that are important to us. Of course, as I mentioned, we get to decide zoning, where these things go, how far away can they be from a house of worship, a school, so on and so forth. Also, and this was a kind of a surprise to me, remember that cannabis use by adults, that means 21 and older, is now legal, right? So there will be no criminal arrests or prosecutions for those who do that. However, a municipality can prohibit the public consumption of cannabis or cannabis products, meaning on public spaces. So we'll look into that a little bit further, but the initial regulations indicate that we can restrict where cannabis is used. It can be used on private property, but not in public spaces, township spaces, or even indoor spaces that are public spaces, like some of our township-owned facilities. We cannot restrict the delivery of services in our jurisdiction, although we can prohibit the operation of a delivery service from here. We cannot prohibit the delivery through here. And what else? You know, there's a lot of other stuff. Like I said, it's 160 pages. And also we also have the right, I'm almost finished, Ms. Adams, please bear with me. We also have the right to put into place local equity initiatives that relate to this. And we could talk about that later, what that means. So again, we temporarily opted out until we knew what the regulations would look like. And we always said that we would opt back in when we knew what the regulations are. We have a local cannabis regulatory committee. Our committee, my co-chair on that committee is Mr. DeLuca. We will take a deeper dive into these regulations, and we will see what's appropriate for our community. Of course, we're going to have public discussions about this. We will definitely liaise with our health department on this. We will liaise with several community groups that are already working on the social justice and equity issues related to this. Everyone will be included. Finally, in municipalities where there is an existing ATC, meaning a medical dispensary, such as ours, that dispensary will be allowed to enter the retail market so long as they have, it's not automatic, they have to have at least the approval of the local municipality, at least a letter of compliance. And with that, I turn it over to Mr. DeLuca, who I believe wants to talk about that. Mr. DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Let me just see, Ms. Adams, did you have a question related to anything?
Related to anything at all? Yeah. But I'll wait until you, because maybe
Okay.
you'll address it.
So, as Mr. Daffis said, that an existing alternative treatment center can apply to continue to sell medical marijuana and adult use marijuana, provided that two things, that they have a sufficient supply to meet both of those demands, and also that they have a letter of support, and that the letter of support says that the zoning permits their continued operation. So we have received a request from Terrace, New Jersey, the owners, Patricia Zita, and Trish has asked us to vote to approve, to support their application. All along, we had carved out, when we did the exception, when we did the zoning prohibition, we had carved out existing alternative treatment centers in recognition of the investments that they've made, their work with us, and our interest in making sure that our community was one of the first to be able to sell adult use cannabis. So I would move that we approve or support the application of Terrace, New Jersey, or Terrace to continue to sell medical and adult use cannabis in Maplewood.
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor Medihi?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Before we move off this discussion topic, Ms. Adams, did you have a point in regards to Mr. Daffis' presentation?
I did, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about fees on a state level. We know that liquor license, are ridiculous. Is there anything in that 160 pages that I confess I have not read that addresses fees, whether on a state or, and what are our local level fees or anything about fees?
There is a lot of information, yes, about fees, and the fees are variable depending on type of business, retail, wholesale, delivery, et cetera, cultivator. And they are sliding within each level to accommodate, like I said, the equity part of this, micro business, minority owned, et cetera, et cetera.
It's quite steep for an existing ATC to apply to sell adult use. Very, very steep. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Oh, well, they're keeping with the liquor licenses, I guess.
Yeah. But there's no local fee that I could find in the regulations other than the 2% tax.
That's right.
No allowance for it, or just no, it doesn't opine on it at all?
There's nothing that enables, that I could find that enables a local municipality to charge a fee.
Is there anything that prohibits?
I didn't see anything, but like I said,
I don't know that.
Dive deeper and we'll report back.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one thing I did want to ask Mr. Desiderio to take a look at, and this is in subchapter 5, municipal authority. There is I'm just trying to do, I think it's item I. It says a county or municipal government shall not solicit from a cannabis business, and a cannabis business shall not offer anything of value in exchange for zoning approval, proof of local support, or written approval of such cannabis business, or take other action that would violate local government ethics. Now, we've created a host agreement with Terrace, and I just want to make sure we're not bumping up against this. I'm not sure that this applies. I think this is more about ethics as opposed to a willing agreement between the parties to honor the host agreement. I did speak to one of the principals of Terrace who called me yesterday, and they did say that they are willing to honor the host agreement going forward. So if you could just take a look at that, and as when we meet with our local cannabis group, you'd be able to give us your viewpoint on that.
Certainly.
Thank you.
I welcome Mr. Desiderio's further look into that as well. Although I don't think, as you think, Mr. DeLuca, I don't expect that we'd be in violation. It's an ethics thing. I mean, we certainly are not doing a quid pro quo.
Right.
Our host agreement doesn't say that if you do this, we'll allow you, you're going to be approved in your zoning. We did our zoning first.
My first blush is agree with you, Mr. Daffis, but we'll take a look at it.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the summary of the regulations. And like I said, more coming on that. We'll have public meetings and we'll start moving the ball on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. We skipped a discussion items. We're going to shoot back up, and that is outdoor dining and parklets, the future, and the merchant study results, which I know that we talked about in a subcommittee meeting. So Mr. Daffis, I'll yield the floor back to you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So there was a survey conducted of merchants and business owners, property owners, to kind of assess how people are feeling and what they want to see as it relates to outdoor dining and street closure. We received, out of the 40 businesses, we received about 32 responses. So it was a pretty fulsome response. And, some people did it online. Some people actually talked to our new village manager, Kat Dillette, on the phone or in person. So, we got some really good responses. 75% of the responses that we received are in favor of carrying on with outdoor dining and street closures. We only received 3 respondents who thought that outdoor dining and street closure should be discontinued altogether. Those merchants and business owners not in favor of outdoor dining or street closures had concerns as they relate to parking for customers. Whether or not the outdoor dining should be year-round or only seasonal, say spring through summer, those results were split 50-50, interestingly. And I want to note that some of our merchants have already erected outdoor dining structures that are seasonal. They are weatherproof. As it relates to street closures, again, the majority of responses welcomed the pedestrian plaza that we kind of created. It's, everyone said that it helps their businesses and it increases pedestrian walkability in our town. They've noticed that somehow we've learned to alter our behavior as it relates to parking. People are parking in those areas that we've been trying to get them to park on now and further, outside the perimeter of the village and some other areas for years. And the pedestrian plaza has done that successfully. The one recommendation we did receive, people want to see the street closures continue, but only from Thursday through Saturday, starting at 6 p.m. So that's something we're going to note. And I have to say that we've started doing that organically anyway, based on feedback we've been receiving from merchants, business owners, and the residents who live right there in the village and nearby the village. We discussed the survey results and had a fulsome discussion last night at our Maplewood Village Alliance board meeting. And the recommendations that came out of that meeting are the following. Continue outdoor dining through next summer and evaluate again at that point, see where we are with COVID and any variants. There was a recommendation, it wasn't a majority recommendation, it kind of was like 50-50, a recommendation to develop guidelines for outdoor dining spaces by the MVA Design Committee. Some members of the board felt that that would create an extra level of bureaucracy that's really not necessary. I certainly advocated to keep things as they are. Outdoor dining is on public streets within the jurisdiction of the township. That is why the township, through our great clerk, Liz Fritzen, and our interdepartmental review process, approves these things and reviews outdoor dining applications. As I said, street closure recommendation is to do Thursday through Saturday at 6 p.m. and one Saturday per month close earlier and do a event-like closure around the village. The outdoor markets, the retail markets were very welcome, and they really helped our retail businesses, not just the restaurants. They want to see that go forward once a month or as weather allows. And those are the survey results. As you all know, what we have in place is good through the end of the year, 12/31. And this will give us some insight as we get closer to that date and decide what to do as we get into the new year.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. It's very thoughtful and good results. Any comments from my colleagues? Ms. Adams.
Yeah, I think, being that this is kind of my line of work, I totally agree that we should keep outdoor dining. The biggest problem we've always had in Maplewood Village in particular is the lack of space on the sidewalk on which to create that street life, that activity in the street that the parklets enabled us to create, right? And so that's what people are starting to respond to. So in downtown revitalization world, the upside of COVID has been, in fact, that people have realized that they don't have to park right in front of where they want to go, and that they actually like the feel of the community. I mean, you think about it, it's sort of why everyone loves Paris, because you sit outside and you people watch. So it's something that American towns have been lacking overall, with tight restrictions on space, course, we need ADA, passage issues might have to be vetted out a little bit more, maybe at code to make sure that, or through the outdoor dining permit. But I would be in favor of permitting the parklets, not necessarily street closures, but the parklets year round, as I would outdoor dining as weather permits, because as we've seen, I mean, there are people who sit outside. There are days in February and January that are nice, and then you get snow after that. I think there needs to be, I'm not sure which committee this would go to from a township perspective, but I think there needs to be, and I'd be happy to participate, some working subcommittee just to come up with parameters, because they're different than sidewalk cafes, with regard to when storms are coming, or what kind of barriers or design issues that Mr. Daffis mentioned that the MBA was talking about. They're important. So we need to get police and fire involved and DPW as to when there's a snowstorm coming. Like, do we, all those like the little things that need to get kind of vetted out and just kind of laid out, so we have information that and rules that those businesses can follow for when things are coming. And also just, in my experience, the retail businesses in the areas where there have been parklets taking parking have found increased attention to their businesses by the fact that those of us in my line of work who've been trying to convince people that taking away a couple parking spaces to put in parklets actually makes people hang around more. And when they hang around more, they spend more, not just where they are, but all through the business districts. So I think it's, I think we need to look at some rules and regulations on a broader scale than just MBA, but also like anywhere else that we've utilized parklets. Probably not that many, but we just need to look at it all. And but I would be in favor of year-round outdoor dining, year-round outdoor parklets, and the closures on the weekends I think makes sense as opposed to 6 days a week.
Yeah. So Ms. Adams, thank you. And I think since you and I both sit on the code committee, where we also have the input of fire, safety, and other some of the other interdepartmental review and approval processes that you mentioned, I think maybe creating a subcommittee from code would be helpful in further, looking into this further, if you agree to that.
Yeah, I don't really care where. I mean, maybe it's engineering, public works, because that's part of it. Maybe it's public safety. I mean, it might be just a little bit of, it might be just sort of an internal department head kind of committee, almost like for an event, right? So that you get that input.
So
It's the office.
the one option, and this is how we did it before, is we did it through OEM because it allows us to get everybody who wants to be involved at a meeting. So that's just another option, but I'm certainly fine you guys doing it in code. I would just say that I think the parklets, I think there's got to be an affirmative move on the part of the restaurant that they're actually going to use it in July and February and March, because I think the worst it would be, in my opinion, it would be better to, if they're not going to use it, I'm thinking of a couple of them that really don't use it that much. It'd be better to pull it and then put it back there in April if they want it, because it does impede traffic flow. It does impede street cleaning, snow removal. So I'm thinking of a couple on the side streets that really don't use it that much.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think that's the rules and regs part, because part of that is us determining where they can be. Do we want the existing parklets to continue, or do we want to add to them, or do we want to take away some of them, or do we want to, force like joint use of existing parklets, things like that are So it's a really good point.
And I think the other thing is, we have 3 or 4 other resolutions out there that all expire December 31st, like the 15-minute parking, the use of our parks and public spaces to run businesses. Do we want to continue that? So maybe it is just having a OEM meeting so that we have police and fire and engineering and at that table and community development at that table to kind of weigh in on how we want to move forward.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Ms. Fritz and I are talking. We have 6 ordinances that we need to discuss, resolutions rather. So why don't we just go ahead and do that? And
Okay.
this conversation vetted from our August code meeting, Mr. Daffis, I remember when Kat joined us. And so the surveys are the result of that. So let's start OEM, see where we go from there, kick it back to code and move forward.
Agreed.
Thank you.
That's good.
All right, moving on to discussion item number 6, which is Mr. DeLuca adding Oregon Street between Springfield Avenue and Laurel Avenue. Mr. DeLuca.
I move that we authorize Mr. Desiderio to add Oregon Street as delineated here to the 5-foot from driveway ordinances. They're getting a lot of parking from customers on Springfield Avenue, particularly a large doctor's office there.
I'll second that. All right, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Lambert?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
May I ask a question just for direction purposes? I note that the 5-foot parking for Milburn Avenue got pulled. I get requests from engineering to say that put these on the agenda, and generally they'll tell me that it was vetted before planning and engineering. Is there, do you not want, what I'm asking is what process do you want me to do?
Yeah,
You want me to bring these to you before we put them on? I want to be compliant with what engineering wants, but I don't want to. Ms. Fritzen gets very mad at me if I mess up her numbering.
No, it's okay. She
is very annoyed.
When we moved the meeting, we had to.
Hi, Mr. Desiderio. When we moved the meeting, I had to pull it because the publication wasn't right.
Correct.
Okay. So we want to keep it up. So we want to put it back on. All right. But let me just ask again for process purposes.
I think the engineering and public works.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, very good.
That's how we've done it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move on to agenda item number 12, consent agenda. I will entertain a motion, Mr. Lambert.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move adoption of items 1 through 21 on the consent agenda. That includes resolutions 238-21 and 254-21 through 271-21, as well as approval of the April 6, 2021 Township Committee regular session minutes and no minutes for the August 3rd closed session.
Second.
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We'll now move on to agenda item number 13, public comment on any subject matter, limit 3 minutes. Mr. Waltz, if you're still awake in the other room, can you please go ahead and handle the process?
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Township Committee. We'll now begin the second public comment portion of the meeting on any subject matter. If any meeting attendee would like to address the Township Committee, please use the raise your hand function. We'll convert you over to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak. Would anybody like to address the Township Committee? Okay, Mayor, it looks like we have a few. So first up, we have a Paul Sorvel. You have 3 minutes. We'll convert you to a panel.
We have Joan Crystal.
Oh, Joan, sorry. I didn't see Joan come in. Sorry.
Hello. One comment on the parklet issue that I've raised to a few of you, and that is that there's a handicap parking space that is covered by one of the parklets. And that is causing a problem for mobility challenged people who do need the handicap parking. This space is in front of Kim's Nails. It does have the handicap parking sign on the sidewalk directly in front of it. is there any way in which that handicap parking space could be reclaimed?
So I think we moved that handicap spot down in front of the bookstore. Isn't that correct?
No, that's a separate handicap parking space that also existed prior to the pandemic and had been taken over for curbside parking.
Okay, so Ms. Crystal, we can have our engineer take a look. That doesn't, yeah, I remember we looked at this. But we'll double check and then we'll send you an email and let you know. But I think, yeah. Thank you, Ms. Crystal.
Thank
Okay, Mayor, now we have Paul Cervella.
Where'd he go?
Not sure.
I see him there, maybe muted.
I don't even see him.
Oh, he's gone now. You're right.
Let's move on, Mr. Waltz. It's getting late.
Okay, so next up we have Heather Soslovsky. 3 minutes. We'll convert you to a panelist.
I just have a quick question. What happened to the community fridge?
Mr. Daffis, you want to take that one?
That's a good question for Mr. Jimes.
I think it's about electric, if I'm not mistaken, from Breckenhuman. It's not?
Right, it is.
That's been resolved.
Right. It's been resolved and it's still sitting there. What's going on, Mr. Jimes?
Okay, we didn't have Breckenhuman in August, so.
I don't have an answer tonight at the moment. I apologize. I'll get
Follow up, Mr. Foster.
thing in the morning.
Thank you. We'll follow up.
Follow up. Thank you, Mrs. Soslovsky.
I see no one else at this time, Mayor.
All right.
Mr. Servo is back on the attendee list. Can we move him over to see if he wants to speak to us?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
His hand is up again.
Sure.
He's muted.
Okay, that was easy. All right, so I actually was attempting to get on in the first session, the first public comment session. And I think I was the guy who someone saw at the end, but it was my mistake. I misunderstood the directions. The reason I want to talk now is to follow up with your resolution on the referendum. And I'm one of the people who petitioned to make a referendum possible. And I think a lot of the testimony that you've heard tonight is so heartrending and compelling that we really need to think about whether building a nearly $2 million artificial turf field that would create additional stormwater and in which the stormwater would have particles, toxic particles going into the waterways, whether that's really what Maplewood wants to do. And I don't think it's too late for you guys to change your mind about this, because I think that if you really think about all of the issues that are coming together right now and converging on Maplewood and the world, the climate emergency, the health emergency, the need for unity in the community, that the right thing to do right now is to rescind the ordinance and move forward with a win-win solution, which you guys have codified in the explanatory statement. Because at the end of the explanatory statement, it's very clearly stated that there are other ways of improving the field beyond artificial turf. And that process, by the way, has already started with Lincoln Landscaping. I was out there 12 hours after the storm. It was dry. There were I didn't see any potholes. The landscaping work has been extremely effective. I had a conversation with a soccer coach, coaches high school soccer. He also has a local club. he said to me that he sort of favors artificial turf, but if we could improve the fields in Memorial Park. and
30
Maple Terrace
seconds.
Park as well as DeHart, that would basically achieve the same result as an artificial turf field in terms of expanding the amount of time available for people to play. So I'm imploring you, think about it, maybe not tonight, but think about whether you can come together and pass another resolution that would enable the town to come together, because this referendum is going to be very divisive. And it should be. But I don't think it has to be. I think we can
10 seconds.
find another solution that's a win-win solution for everybody, all the stakeholders. So thank you for the time. And my address is 101 Plymouth Avenue. I forgot to say that. Vic knows that.
Thank you, Mr. Travell. And Ms. Fritz has said, thank you. You're one of the few who knows how to do the process. So thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Waltz, does that conclude for this evening?
That's all I have for you at this time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. With that, we'll close our final public comment, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:30.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Therefore, we will now adjourn. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.